Hi everyone. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the General Chemistry Lab course overview so that you have an idea of what to expect when you come to your first General Chemistry Lab. But before I do that, I'd like to welcome you to the General Chemistry course. My name is Colin, and I help to oversee this course, and we're really excited to work with you this upcoming semester. So this semester, we're doing something a little bit differently. We're using a education technique called POGL to build up your chemistry skills over the first 5 weeks of the course, such that by the 5th week of the course, we're going to synthesize aspirin. This is aspirin right here. To a chemist, this says salicylic acid plus acetic anhydride yields aspirin. And in order to synthesize aspirin, we have to have a lot of skills. Some of the skills include math and theory skills like counting by mass and what moles are, understanding balanced chemical equations, identifying limiting reagents, and calculating theoretical yields. But there's also practical skills like working safely in a lab, measuring masses in volume, precipitating, and filtering. And to be successful, we have to build up all of these skills. So we're going to spend 5 weeks working on these skills in teams. So if we were playing sports, we wouldn't start with the game, right? We would start with practice. You're going to learn to work together during that practice for a sport. They build the skills they need to play. So practice free throws, practice passing, practice dribbling if you're playing basketball. And they form connections with their teammates. In POGL, that's how we're going to practice chemistry. We're going to start with some fundamental skills like dimensional analysis, using algebra, using Excel. These are some fundamental skills that will help you to be successful in this course. Then we're going to apply those skills to solve more complex problems like converting grams to moles or doing stoichiometry or even eventually finding limiting reagent and theoretical yield. But we're going to build these skills up slowly in groups of about 4. It'll also give you an opportunity to build connections with your classmates that you could use potentially outside of the classroom, to have a group of people to study with. So this is how we're going to practice and train our chemistry so that after 5 weeks, we are going to be more comfortable with stoichiometry. So what are we going to provide? We're going to provide structured step-by-step activities to help you build these key chemistry skills. So a lot of these things are going to have times between, say, like 15 and 30 minutes. Some of them are going to involve doing things like mixing things together or measuring things and things like this. Others of them are going to involve using Excel. Others of them are going to involve what is effectively problem solving on a sheet where you're going to kind of look through it and it's going to give you an example and then you'll go through an example by yourself, kind of a thing, in a group of 4. So there's lots of different ways that we're going to build up these skills. You're going to have opportunities to talk through your thinking with your classmates. And this is really important that all group members are sharing their thinking and why they're getting to the answer that they're getting. Because when we're right, that helps our classmates to understand what process is used to solve these different types of problems. And if we're not sure, that actually helps our classmates understand how to solve these kind of processes just as well. I've learned a lot more over the years from things that I make mistakes on than things that I just get the first time. We're going to support you while you're working through these problems in the form of TAs. We have some pre-labs that are available in order to help you to work through some similar POGL things before you come to lab. And we're going to give you the chance to build these skills in a low-stakes team setting. There's no high-stakes grades here. You're working with your team together, and you're solving these problems. But there are some things that we ask you to bring as well. So we provide some things, but we need you to provide some things as well. You need to come to lab and be willing to work on these problems in your group. You need to focus during the lab and stay present to contribute to your group. We're not going to be on our phones. We're not going to use AI. AI is not going to help us to learn chemistry. There's an argument that in some ways it can help, but it's certainly not going to help us because the goal here isn't to get the answers. The goal here is to work through the process so that we understand how to get to the answers. Because by working through these processes, we build our problem-solving skills. And that's the goal. That's what we want you to do. You're also going to practice outside of the lab. The lab shouldn't be the only time that you're doing chemistry work. So we're going to give you some opportunities to talk about what types of practice are working for you with your classmates. And we'd like you to bring a positive attitude towards learning and problem solving. Even if you never want to use chemistry again, you can gain problem-solving skills in this course that are useful for many, many other things in life. Because in life, there's no manual, right? There's always things that we have to evaluate and make decisions about and things like that. And problem-solving skills are very, very useful for those kinds of things. So now that I've talked a little bit about what the course is going to be like for the first 5 weeks, let me talk about some more general things. There are some course materials that are required. A lab coat, gloves, goggles, and a lab manual are required. And these can all be purchased in Chemistry B44 in the basement of this building. Okay. You don't need to have the gloves, goggles, and a lab coat until POGL 3. However, sometimes there's long lines, so it can be useful to go early, like this week, like the first week of classes, in order to get these things, because you might have a shorter line if you do that. You're also going to need a scientific calculator. We also have a dress code, which is no open-toed shoes, completely covered legs and feet, and your hair tied back. Again, POGL 1 and POGL 2. POGL 1 is the syllabus day, the very first meeting. Then there's a break because we happen to have Labor Day, the second week of class this year. Then the third week is POGL 3, and then, POGL 2, and then the fourth week, I guess, is going to be POGL 3. That's when you need all of these things, the dress code and the gloves, goggles, the lab coat. For POGL 1 and 2, we're not really using any chemicals. Course workflow. So the course workflow will be a little bit different from the first 5 weeks to the other experimental weeks. So after the first 5 weeks, we're kind of going to do the regular experiment thing, as you probably would expect that a lab would work like. So for the POGL weeks, there's a pre-lab for the POGL that you work through the concepts. The pre-labs are also POGL based. So there's information there and it goes over, how to do an example problem. It takes you through an example problem step by step, and then it kind of has you do your own problem. There is no pre-lab for the very first POGL day because it's a very first day of class. We're not going to have a pre-lab for that because that's not really fair. So POGL 2 will be the first one with a pre-lab. In the lab, before the POGL exercise, you will check in for attendance, take the course content quiz, and basically the course content quiz is on lecture material, and every week I'll make an announcement that'll tell you what will be on that quiz. Then you'll do your POGL work. As I mentioned before, you'll break into groups of about 4. Each group member will take on a role for each section. You'll see what those roles look like when you do the POGL the first day. The groups work together to build their knowledge of chemistry. And then at the end, the groups turn in one paper for the entire group, which will typically be worth 15 points because 10 points will be the pre-lab and 25 points is the total grade. But the very first week, the group paper is 25 points because there is no pre-lab for POGL 1. So, what about course workflow after the POGL weeks? Well, it's going to be a little while, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I just want to mention it. So, for the regular labs, the pre-lab quiz, including a data analysis question, will be worth 10 points. So you'll have a different type of pre-lab that asks you more about how that lab is going and asks you to analyze some data from that lab. You'll also write a hypothesis and procedure in the lab manual, which will be checked when you come in and take attendance at the beginning of lab. Before the experiment, you'll check in for attendance, take a course content quiz. This time, the TA will give you an experiment presentation that goes over how the experiment works. You'll do the lab work, collect the data, and then you'll analyze the data and upload the analyzed data file to Brightspace. After the experiment, you'll write a conclusion in your lab manual, and you'll answer a few post-lab questions. All this adds up to 25 points as well, and the lab overall is worth 25% of your grade, including the POGL. So, what is the take-home message of this? Almost every week you have a pre-lab to do on Brightspace. The only week you don't is the very first week. For the POGL experiments, the pre-lab is POGL style. It's kind of guided. You'll see what that style is during your first lab. Then for the experiment weeks, the pre-lab is more write a hypothesis, like what do you expect to happen, write an experimental procedure. These are written things. And then you'll do the pre-lab quiz, which is asking you about these things that you wrote. It's also asking you to analyze the data. Lab safety and lab cleanliness. As I mentioned before, starting with POGIL 3, we're actually going to be working with chemicals. In fact, in POGIL 3, we're going to be working with a Bunsen burner and some hydrated copper sulfate. So it's very, very important to be dressed appropriately, be wearing goggles, gloves, and a lab coat. Safety is the number one priority of everybody in the lab. It's absolutely essential that you wear goggles, and unfortunately, we will ask you to leave if you're not wearing your goggles because it's for your own good. Better to get a 0 on a lab than to lose one's vision. So safety is the number one priority. Safety includes cleanliness. It is not safe to have chemicals all over the benches or on the balances or on the glassware. The labs that you guys work in are an extremely controlled environment, right? There's only a very limited number of chemicals in there. But real labs aren't like that. There's lots of chemicals. Some are harmless, like sodium chloride. Some are incredibly toxic for various different reasons, okay? They might be carcinogenic or they might be corrosive. There's lots of different ways that chemicals can be hazardous. And many, many, many of them are white powders. So because you see a white powder on something doesn't mean it's necessarily harmless or it's very dangerous. You can't tell just by looking at it. So it's really important that as you learn to work in a lab, you learn to clean up the chemicals as you go. Because if you spill something, no big deal. But it's really important that it gets cleaned up because the next person isn't going to know what it is. In the case of a fire alarm, please do make sure to evacuate the building. You definitely don't want to be in this chemistry building. There's lots of flammable, nasty stuff in here if there's a fire. So just turn off what you're doing, go outside, meet in the courtyard between the chemistry building and the biology building. We are here to help you learn chemistry. What you're going to find is that about 20 hours a week, you'll be able to talk to a TA or a staff member about lecture or lab material, and we are more than happy to help you. So please come and see us. We'll make announcements about when exactly those times are, so you can come and see us and get help on your chemistry. We look forward to working with you this semester. We're looking forward to seeing you use this POGIL material to build your chemistry skills. Thank you very much for watching, and see you soon.